With the first round of the college football playoff now behind us, the biggest question that seems to be going around is, do we like this new format? Do we not? Everything in sports is a numbers game, and we've got the numbers to kind of back up where this new format stands and where we see it going from here, and maybe where we could tweak some things a little bit to be better. I'm your host, Matthew Raridan, and this is Total Sports Talk Beyond the Lights. What's going on, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Total Sports Talk Beyond the Lights, where I'm your host, Matthew Raridan, and with me today, as always, is none other than Ed Smith.
Welcome, y'all.
First and foremost, we hope that everybody had a Merry Christmas, enjoyed some time with your family, and to kind of start early, hope you have a Happy New Year as well. We'll get back to that, but just hope you guys spend some time with your family and, of course, be responsible and be safe. But let's take a dive into our main topic, and that is the college football playoff. Things have revamped. They are looking different. We had 10 years of the normal college football playoff format with the four best teams in the country. Best teams, sorry. Always got to put quotation marks there because things differ depending on opinion. And we are not the college football playoff committee, but we have a new format. We have a 12-team college football playoff. First round is done and over with. We have officially tripled the field. And Ed, like I started out with, is this a net positive? Is this a good thing or a bad thing so far?
I think it has made the season much more impactful with the games that have been scheduled because before this format cropped up, it was, oh, well, you're only going to get four teams, so you're only looking at maybe six teams total as being national championship contenders. Whereas now we are looking at teams down the line as far as uh, all, you have your group of five having the opportunity as an automatic bid. You've got so much that you can work with. The question becomes, are those teams past five or six really worth putting in a field to go toward a national championship bracket?
Yeah, this isn't the intention of the college football playoff committee, but I want to share a few things of what I've seen. And the first main point is the regular season starting the next couple years is going to be way more exciting because the controversy of teams that were left out in this year's playoff is now going to be, well, we need to schedule more competitive games throughout the year. We can't have these walk in the park JV football teams on our schedule. We need to have way more competition and early on as well. And I know that takes time because scheduling is done several years in advance, but you're going to start seeing the benefits of this reap because we will start seeing way more competitive games in the regular season. Like I said, this is not the college football playoffs committee's intent, but it is going to end up being that way because the teams that were left out, Alabama, they were upset because of not making it. Miami, well, you have to have better, you know, strength of schedule. There's a lot of more variables now that are going to be tweaked because of that. But it net positive, you could say yes, and we do have numbers here, Ed. Do you want to hone in on maybe some of these numbers that we've seen after the first round came out?
Well, there are a couple of things numbers wise to look at. One is, are more people paying attention to college football playoff than, say, a run of the mill regular season NFL game? And the resounding answer is no, they're not. Uh, College football, for as great as it's becoming year after year after year, it still pales in comparison to the popularity of the NFL. There were two games that were impacted by NFL watch parties during the first round of the playoff. And the first game that was impacted was SMU and Penn State, which averaged 6.4 million viewers on them being on television versus the Texans and Chiefs in the NFL, which averaged 15.5. That's more than double what people are looking at in the first round of college football playoff. Then later on, you had the Clemson and Texas game, much bigger brands over the past 25 years than the first two, for sure. And that was only drew 8.6 million versus, once again, 15.4 million for the Steelers and Ravens. So we are definitely seeing an uptick as far as popularity of college football, but it still pales in comparison, especially when you consider the first round of these playoffs. Everybody pretty well just gave it as a given that the home teams were going to just walk through. And that's exactly what we got.
Yeah, and I feel like there was no favors here either because a game on TNT, a game on Fox, I feel like there's not really much comparison there. This isn't the NBA All Star Weekend where you're watching TNT. This is different, and it almost wasn't fair. And this was the NFL pumping their chest, pretty much showing you that they are superior when it comes to these viewers right now, and they really were. The numbers don't lie. That's not me saying that the NFL is better than college football or vice versa, because there is way more passion in college football than there is in the NFL. But people would rather turn into an NFL game, and it's a regular season game right now uh, with this first round of playoff, because just like Ed said, it was almost expected that these home teams were just going to win, and they were going to win pretty easily. And for the most part, they all did. So it just pretty much proved those viewers right. And next year, the same thing will probably happen again. That's just kind of how the cookie crumbles. But the, college football is still going to benefit because with these more weeks, regardless, they're still going to get more viewers than they probably would than the 4-team format, because at the end of the day, they, for the most part, know what they're doing. But uh, now, speaking of that 4-team format, though, Ed, with the games that we've seen already, the teams that we've seen throughout the regular season, that 4-team format, who would we have in that playoff with this year? I'll let you go first if you'd like.
Well, I it could be rather simple on this answer, but it could be a little more complex than that. Because these automatic bids really mess with the seeding
Yeah.
of who's going to be in these, uh, who would have been in this 14 format, and Notre Dame would have thrown a wrench in it as well,
Yeah.
because them not being affiliated with a conference, ACC, um, then they have always had like these special rules made for them when it came to postseason play. They had it in the BCS, they have it in the playoff format, in the 14 playoff format. So I would anticipate that you would see Oregon, the only undefeated team out there. I think Ohio State still earned their way in despite uh, that loss at that loss against Michigan, because they are clearly the second best, first or second best team in the Big Ten.
Yeah.
Uh, then you would have Georgia by way of beating Texas in the SEC championship game, and probably Notre Dame because they're Notre Dame. Uh, they they talk about this format talks about the scheduling, as you alluded to, but these rivalry games, these long-standing tradition games, which in Notre Dame's case, they're more long-standing tradition games more than rivalry games, because let's be honest, playing Army and Navy are not going to get you the clout that you need versus having, say, Texas going to Michigan, putting that on your schedule versus playing Army and Navy. It just doesn't weigh out. But because Notre Dame only lost the one game, which was early enough in the season not to disrupt them too much, I still think that they would have been the fourth seed in this 14 format.
Yeah, I would agree too, because last year we saw when Georgia lost in the SEC championship game, they got dropped from the top four, and Texas would have been dropped because of that. Uh, 2 and 3, as far as rankings go, isn't really going to matter because they'd still face against each other. But with Georgia winning, I'd almost probably have to put them at 2,
Mm-hmm.
unless they want to do what they did with FSU and Carson Beck got hurt. So who knows what the committee will do at that point, because it's all about how your team's going to do without that. So, but I would probably go Oregon 1, Georgia 2, Ohio State 3, and then Notre Dame at 4. I feel like it'd be the same teams as you. Rankings, you could tweak it up with 2 and 3, only because Georgia did win the SEC, and the SEC is very, very tough. So that's probably where I'd go. But we're no longer there with this 4-team bracket. It's now 12 teams. We probably could narrow it down to 8, but they're going to be tweaking this for sure. This is a trial run. They're going to succeed regardless. They're still going to get viewers regardless, because there's going to be some big time games coming up here, Ed, and we're going to talk about them. But Ed, I got to ask you, because I know that you're a big proponent to this, but with this many teams, does college football need to go back to the BCS system? Because did that system fail because it targeted only 2 teams, do you think?
I think it failed because it targeted two teams, and those two teams were more based upon being undefeated, and they did have to play cupcake. They did wind up playing cupcake schedules outside of conference just to walk themselves through an undefeated portion of the season. Uh, and then you saw teams like Auburn in 2004. They were undefeated, but they were the third undefeated team. They had no opportunity to play in the BCS championship game because of a computer system.
Yes.
I think a hybrid system is what we are eventually going to lead up to. It'll take a few years for it to happen, but I'm going to say somewhere in the vicinity of like a 80-20, 75-25 rule of computer versus the committee, because you need hard data to really get through some of the muddle out there as far as how what these teams are able to do when you're talking about a collection of over 130 teams at Division 1. So there's that, and then you have your committee that needs to be people that are not affiliated on a corporate level with the the institutions that are basically fighting it out. We need people that know what they're talking about, coaches, former players, committee members uh, of regulatory status. Those combination of things in a committee, not chancellors of 5 different schools that all most likely have somebody a team that more than likely would be part of the group that they're selecting from.
You mean they don't have their grandsons picking for them, like Woody Johnson?
Oh God, are
Yeah,
going. or going into the locker rooms telling them how bad their fantasy team is.
Yes, exactly. I mean, when in doubt, just count on your grandkids to get the job done for you. But continue with your point.
Yeah, I mean, we saw some BCS busters through that time period, such as the 2010 TCU team, which beat Wisconsin in the Rose Bowl. We saw the 2008 Utah team, which beat Alabama in the Sugar Bowl and should have had an opportunity if there was a playoff format. Those things, when you have only two teams that you're boiling it down to, that becomes more difficult to get all the teams that could win this thing.
Yeah,
But by having it in a larger format like this 12 team or probably the 16 team format we'll see in a few years, if you have that set up by the BCS plan, then you've got a much better bracket to work with. There's always going to be complaints about teams that were left out. Just look at March Madness; it happens every year.
yes,
Well, this at least we can look at hard numbers and go, yes, these 16 teams are deserving of an opportunity. And that's all you're looking for in getting into this playoff is an opportunity. And having the BCS, I think, does that more judiciously than the subjectivity of 12 recliners watching, five different TV screens.
yeah. Was that '08 year the same year the Tostitos Bowl with Boise State and
Yep.
Oklahoma? Oh
Yes.
my gosh, can you imagine that year? And I will, and you got to give flowers to where they're due. But that Boise State team really, they uh, they put Boise State on the map then, and so that would have been a fun year.
And I just read a story that Ian Johnson, the running back
Running
that
back, yeah.
that scored the 2 point conversion, he is still married to that cheerleader that he proposed to on the sideline.
Yeah. Oh, he's. I used to live there. I used to live there in Boise. He is a hometown hero. He really is. No matter where you're at, he's always talked about. I worked at a sandwich shop, and the owner is best friends with him. I mean, and it's just crazy because there's no professional teams there in Idaho. It's all collegiate sports, and they love their Boise State Broncos there. So it's a great place to go. If you've never been, go check out a game there at Albertson Stadium. Blue field, blue turf. You've heard the stories. It's fun. But yeah, that 2008 year would have been pretty crazy, especially with the teams that were left out. But yeah, we're in an age of, you hear the A word, analytics. And yeah, analytics would be part of this, but they leave it up to this committee right now that for the most part gets it wrong, or they're not totally right. So like you said, at a percentage system of both best of both worlds kind of deal.
For sure, for sure. And I, if I remember correctly, the BCS system, because they tweaked it every year,
Yeah.
part of it was based upon the rankings of the AP and the
Mm-hmm.
coaches poll.
Yeah.
That was part of it.
Yeah.
But I don't think that that should be the case. And if they go back to the BCS, it should be just those hard numbers with the committee going, okay, this is where we think, and then plug that into an overall formula.
Yeah, with the strength of schedule, strength of record. I mean, there's so many numbers that go into it now that if you were able to plug it all together, I think we would get good results. So it may come to that someday. It just may. But you look at this playoff expansion. Is it more to create hype during the regular season, like we talked about? Because teams like Arizona State, Boise State, they are a great story, but do they belong in the conversation? I'm one of those that I don't want to really speak too much because we've seen it all happen in March Madness. There is a Cinderella story always waiting to be written, and Arizona State and Boise State could very well do that come this week when they face off against their opponents in the playoffs. But Ed, I got to ask you though, on the surface, Oregon, Ohio State, Georgia, Texas, do they belong in that same conversation of them right now?
I don't think they belong in the same conversation because, for one, the conferences that they play and the level of competition that they're used to playing is not on the same level as Oregon, Ohio State, Georgia, and Texas. It's same. It's the same conversation I'm having with Notre Dame. Half their schedule wasn't high enough competition to say that they are, any better than Arizona State is. But the way that they played that schedule, they wound up being the 5 seed. So I mean 6 seed.
Yeah.
So that's part of it. Um, I think it allows for more really great stories to get to the tournament, and eventually we will see some of these quote Cinderella lower seeded teams or lower level teams become the darlings of the college football playoff by winning a game or two. But in the end, you're going to see your big dogs win it just about every year. And just like in March Madness, how many times have you seen a team in that tournament that is seated lower than, say, three actually go up and win the March Madness tournament overall? It's not very often. So it's a great story. It'll help the regular season help create great stories and more interest in college football, which we all love.
Mhm.
But in the end, there is still a tier below the very tip top of this sport.
Well, and the one issue behind it is for the 10 years of the 4 team format, that should have essentially encouraged group of five schools to want to become a power five, power four now school because it was a lot harder for a group of five to get in there. Now it makes it a lot easier for a group of five team to get in there. So it's like, why would we want to change when we could possibly get that automatic bid? But Boise State, I know, has other plans to join a power conference here, as they should. But you talked about those regular season games, and just off the top of my head, these marquee games that took place in the regular season this year: Ohio State at Oregon. I mean, it almost did not get better than that. Georgia at Texas, Indiana at Ohio State, Georgia at Alabama. I mean, that Georgia and Alabama game brought so many fireworks. I remember being on Twitter pretty much that entire game, and you saw this because it was all Alabama first quarter, first half for the most part, and then things changed real quick, and that became such an exciting game. But Ed, should a conference championship game equal an automatic bid?
In the Power Four, sure.
Yeah.
In the G5, I think it needs to be based upon your merit. Are you undefeated or have you played a level higher than yourself and been competitive at that level and then went undefeated at your level? That's the conversation that we should be having. Boise State actually did that this year by losing at Oregon, the only undefeated team that there is, uh, but yet being undefeated the rest of the way in their season. That to me says that they belong in this playoff format.
Yeah.
But if we wound up in a position where a G5 team, the best overall conference winner is, say, 10-2, but didn't play anybody at a Power Four level, are we really going to reward them by leading them to slaughter into the playoff? That that to me gives me shades of when Hawaii went into the Sugar Bowl and was just completely decimated. You know, and some of these other lower level teams that were part of the BCS Bowl formula that just it just led them to be embarrassed in those games. Those were not competitive. They were great fun, but they weren't competitive the way that a playoff system should be.
Well, and now that we've scrapped the divisions too, that almost makes your point even more valid because it's not like you have the Big Ten where an 8-4 Michigan State team on the West, made it. It's like they don't deserve to really be there. They were just there on merit because there's no one else to really win in the West. So
Right.
now that they've scrapped that, yeah, it's the two best teams in the conference, and I think that a lot if they are within a one loss, two loss team that's right there, then yeah, it's most likely going to be an automatic bid.
And are blowouts going to happen? Absolutely, they'll happen. It's just part
Yeah,
of part of football. They happen.
yeah.
But I think there's a greater possibility of us getting more competitive games by having teams play each other that are deserving to be on the same level.
Yeah. Nope, I agree. And with that being said, I think it's time to kind of jump into these games here because one of these teams that we just talked about is Boise State, and they're going to be facing off against Penn State. And man, this is is this the first time these teams have ever played each other? I mean, off the top of my head, I almost want to say yeah because
I think so.
I you don't see this often, but that's also the good thing about this whole playoff format is we are now seeing teams that do not normally facing off against each other. And Penn State, Boise State, what I saw in Penn State against Oregon in the Big Ten championship game, and then them against SMU, Penn State is showing up. They want to prove the doubters wrong. Of course, the question is, will they continue to prove the doubters wrong? That's always the question that needs to be answered. But the main question is how narrow is the road that Boise State has to win this game? And it is narrow because they're facing off against someone bigger and mightier than them that has played some top tier teams this year. But the Ashton Genty show, will it continue? I talked about this a couple weeks ago when Penn State was facing off against Oregon. Penn State has the best rush defense in all of college football, only averaging 2 yards a carry. I think that's going to change. Ashton Genty, I'm not saying he's the best running back, in the whole world, but he's the best running back in all of college football. So is he going to get his licks in? He will. And he does them later on in the game. He does not get tired. He waits till you get tired, and he just continues to get better. Um, but a question I want to ask you, Ed, how important is it for Drew Aller to elevate his game in this game?
Well, we really didn't see very much out of Drew Aller to beat SMU because we he didn't have to do much. The defense did everything. The defense outscored SMU. That,
Yeah.
that's how that game went. So we didn't really see Drew Aller have to be a guy that put on the cape and put the offense on his back and made the plays for them to be dynamic. He just didn't have to. So we don't know if he can or not. Yes, he led a comeback against Oregon. He's and yes, they lost to Oregon. They lost to Ohio State. It's still the same old story with Penn State. Drew Aller, he's got to elevate his game. Otherwise, even though it's not expected to be as big a test as, say, going against Oregon again in these playoffs, Boise State, they can they can do some things that can frustrate you as a defense and frustrate you as an offense. Can Drew Aller overcome the frustration at quarterback? That's a big question that I have for him. But on the flip side, you've got Boise State's quarterbacks, Maddox Madsen. Can he get the ball out of his hands with that Penn State rush coming at him? Can he turn it on and be that complementary piece to Ashton Genty instead of relying solely on the running game to bring them to victory? That's how narrow the road is for Boise State. Is it's if Genty doesn't go off, which we all believe he will, but if he doesn't, where do they go from there?
Well, it's going to be tough because Penn State's got one of the best edge rushers in all of college football, in Abdul Carter. He's a top NFL prospect, and it doesn't matter who you are. He's always tough to really guard against. And then on the flip side, Boise State has seen a lot this year, but they have not seen anyone like Tyler Warren. Tyler Warren is the Taysom Hill of college football, the Swiss Army knife that you could put him in the backfield, you could put him anywhere, and he will give you his best effort. And he's just hard to cover. He really is. Watching it against Oregon, it was tough because, in my opinion, I felt like they could have just gone to him almost every play because he's just that darn good. And so that's going to be tough for them to cover in addition to both their running backs also. So, and Drew Aller definitely needs to elevate his game because you can't continue to be this mid-tier quarterback and expect to win a national championship game. You need to elevate your game. You need to elevate it when it matters the most. But one thing is certain, just like you alluded to, Ed, this is going to be a typical James Franklin special regardless, because two things can happen here. One, I think we agree that Penn State is the superior team to Boise State. That's Penn State's bread and butter right there, is beating these lower tier teams like it's nothing. But another James Franklin special is Boise State is ranked higher than Penn State. Where does he struggle with these ranked matchups? He struggle. What happens with these ranked matchups? He does struggle. So both things could be right in this game, but I want to pull for Boise State, and I will be rooting for them. But I mean, I have to go with Penn State here. I mean, you see the bettors are behind Penn State. They're an 11-point favorite. It's hard to bet against them right now because they have faced off against the tougher schedule in the Big Ten. So I have to pick Penn State here. Ed, are you in agreement?
I'm in agreement. I think it's going to be uh, pretty handily Penn State because this is going to be in a controlled weather environment. I believe this is uh, the Fiesta Bowl that we're playing in, so it's going to be grass. It's not turf. It's going to be a controlled environment, so weather's not going to be a factor for either one of these teams. Uh, and like you said, the James Franklin special, it's he's 5-21 against teams that are ranked uh, higher than him uh, since he's been at Penn State. This is going to be one where talent wise, he's got the better talent across the entire roster. He doesn't have the best player in this game. I think we can agree that Ashton Genty will be the best player in this game. Uh, but overall, talent wise, top to bottom, James Franklin has the better roster, and that's going to prove itself over 4 quarters. I think Penn State does win this probably 38-20.
Is this the Tostinos Fiesta Bowl? Because if it is, I better see a Statue of Liberty play. I'm taking Boise State at that point. No, I can't keep up with these bowls and who they're sponsored by, the VRBO. I just there's always something. But yeah, I'm gonna go with Penn State this game. But I'm interested to see how well Boise State does against a big power conference school like this. So
Yeah.
next game we got here is your game, Ed. That's the Texas Longhorns and the Arizona State Sun Devils. Another automatic bid here with Arizona State. You're looking at these, once again, a team that is ranked higher, but they're facing a team that is probably more superior than them, and that is the Longhorns. Arizona State, though, has come out of nowhere here for the most part, thanks to their running back in Scadaboo. But the Longhorns, they're 12-2. They've been more on the quiet side, in my opinion. But the last game I felt like was coached to perfection. And I'll let you talk more about that, Ed, with the matchup against Clemson. But I think if Texas brings that same game plan, I think that is a recipe for a win in this game. Is let your running backs go, let them go, because Quinn Ewers, although we know that Quinn Ewers can do Quinn Ewers things, I think you need to let your running backs do it first and then let Quinn Ewers do his thing. But Ed, if they bring that same game plan as last week, how do you see things playing out in this game against Arizona State?
Uh, on on the offensive side, just just hand the ball off. Just get behind that big nasty offensive line and just plow down the field. That's really what Texas needs to do. Right now, Quinn Ewers, he's regressing in my opinion. I've been on here several times, saying that I think he's regressing and he's not able to drive the ball into spaces like he needs to. So, with the way that he's been throwing the ball, he can get down the field and be accurate down the field, but closer to the line of scrimmage, which is where I anticipate Arizona State trying to force Quinn Ewers to throw. I think they're going to try and make Quinn Ewers beat them, which he can. He's just got to stay upright because once he starts getting knocked around a little bit, he starts rushing in his progressions and things start to go awry from there. So just hand the ball off and keep going down the field at that pace. On the flip side, Texas's defensive game plan will just be uh, wreak havoc. That's that's been their plan all along. I mean, we have the Thorpe Award winner and Jonte Barron. Michael Taff is a second team All American. We've had Anthony Hill Jr. at linebacker that is just wreaking havoc all over the place, and we've got a great front four that is constantly being rotated in and out of. I think we are going to have enough bodies to get Cam Scadaboo on the ground and not let him pinball his way past the line of scrimmage that many times. Uh, yes, Cam Scadaboo has fantastic, elite level contact balance, but I think this defense is able to get him to the ground.
Well, and they're going to need to. Running back that kind of reminds me of in the NFL, who I always, as a Steelers fans, always hated and feared playing against was Maurice Jones-Drew. You cannot arm tackle a guy like that. You can't arm tackle Scadaboo either. You need to bring that guy down. And Texas, they're going to have their hands full, but I think they could get it done. I think that you look at Ashton Genty and Scadaboo. Ashton Genty, I think, is going to end up getting his yardage more than Scadaboo will, but Arizona State's going to need to mix in more. And can Sam Levitt do enough against that secondary to really make this a game? Because we know that Scadaboo is going to get a lot of the touches, whether it is running the ball or even including him in the screen game. But can Sam Levitt do more to really kind of spread this game out more? And Ed, I know you're a Texas fan, but I guess I'll try to look at it as an outsider looking in. Do
Mm-hmm.
you think Levitt can do that?
I think Levitt has the tools to get a few throws in. Uh, Maybe not as much as Cade Klubnik,
Mm-hmm.
but you saw what Cade Klubnik was able to do. He was able to put the team on his shoulders and run that offense. My bigger concern for Arizona State in this game is their wide receiving core. Are they up to the task against this secondary? Because this is the number one secondary in the country uh, in yards per pass. So, and the number two overall.
Yeah.
So, I they would need Arizona State would need the wide receiving core to be able to create separation and make some catches, contested catches, for Sam Levitt to to gain confidence, to keep Arizona State in this game long term.
Yeah, and let's talk about the coaches in this game because Kenny Dillingham, young coach. Yeah, he's one of my favorite coaches in college football. He's fun to watch. Uh, he reminds me a lot of kind of like Mike McDaniel in the NFL, young coach. You know, gets along with his players, this, and that. But when you face off against that more superior coach, I think you are going to learn a lesson or two. Sarkisian has been around for a while, and I think that he's got this Texas Longhorns team coached well. But there is one thing that he needs to get better at, Ed. And I know you've been talking about this point for a while now. Stop going for it on fourth down all the time. Take the points, Ed. And Ed will be the first person. He'll be the last person as well to tell you that. So, Ed, I got to ask you, can they show restraint in those situations enough to kick field goals and take the points?
I think I don't think they do. I think they're going to let Arizona State hang around in this game, trying to prove a point that, oh, we are superior to you, so we're going to keep going for it on fourth down because we're so confident in our team that we're going to make it on fourth down every single time. And then we're going to let Arizona State back in this game. And then somehow just pull away at the end after it becomes a one-score game in the third quarter.
Just like they did against Clemson.
And every other game that they played this year.
Yeah. So, do you think that Texas should be favored by less than Penn State is to Boise State?
No, they should be favored by more.
Okay, which they are. They are a 12.5 point favorite right now. But I'm just curious as if how close they let this game really come.
So my my comparison here is, would I trust Arizona State more or Boise State more as far as which team is better?
Yeah.
And I'm thinking Boise State is a better football team than Arizona State is, just from what I've seen up to this point. So there's a reason why Texas has a bigger spread right now, and I, and this is why I think Arizona State is probably the not least deserving. I'm not going to say that.
Yeah.
They are probably of the 12 teams ranked. I would put them right in that 11 to 12 range as far as teams that got in.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that they were the automatic bid conference champion, that's why they're in the fourth seed and automatic buy into the second round.
Well, and here's Texas, 2 weeks in a row, they faced off against Clemson, who, by the committee's rankings, really wouldn't have made it. And Arizona State as well, right there. So they are two of the worst ranking teams essentially in the college football playoff. They are there because they won their conferences. So, hey, good for Texas. Take advantage of it. I mean, at this point, take advantage of it. Any game you can. And that's exactly what Texas is going to do in this game. I've got Texas winning this game. Don't really have a score prediction, but I could see the storyline being exactly how you explained, Ed, is come third quarter, Arizona State's going to find a way to itch themselves back into this game, whether it be within 7 points, 3 points, and then Texas walks away with it later.
Yeah, I totally agree. I'm going to throw a score on it of probably 42-24
Okay.
by all said and done.
Yeah, I mean, let your running backs run away with it. Just give them the ball.
And
Clock management.
not to mention, Texas is getting Isaiah Bond, their number one receiver, back. So you throw him on top of Bolden, Golden, and Ryan Wingo with Gunnar Helm. Keep Gunnar Helm involved and keep the running backs involved. They walk away with this pretty easily.
Yeah, you got Laser, you got Blazer, and Taser.
All kind of hazers. All kind of
Jesus.
holders.
All right, next game here. This one hits
You
really
have the
close to home. That is Ohio State and Buckeyes and Oregon Ducks. This is the granddaddy of them all. This is the Rose Bowl. It is for sure to bring fireworks, just as a Rose Bowl game typically does. Last year's Rose Bowl game between Michigan and Alabama did not disappoint. This game, just like the first matchup this year, will not disappoint. The way Ohio State looked last week, I was impressed. I know that Tennessee was a little banged up. I just didn't expect it to be such a runaway like it ended up being. Ohio State looked near flawless in the first quarter. Essentially, they clicked. They were firing on all cylinders, and if Travion Henderson, Quinshawn Junkins could help Will Howard kind of take some of the load off him, it just makes him more comfortable. I feel like a Will Howard that feels like he needs to do it all. Uh, is not horrible, but I think that that's not going to win you a game. You need to be able to kind of take that load off him, and if those two running backs are able to do that, Ohio State looks good, and they're pissed off because of the Michigan game, and they clearly showed that against Tennessee. They let all their anger, their frustration out on them, and the Volunteers were sent home early. Oregon, on the other hand, they pulled off a great victory against Penn State in the Big Ten championship game, but there's been that layoff. I always sometimes worry about that layoff. Yes, you have the pros of getting your players some rest, getting those guys that were banged up back to some healthiness, not full, because let's be real, football is a contact sport. You're never fully healthy, and that's great and all, but sometimes when you rest, it does kind of you kind of gather some rust. We see it with those teams that do get those first round buys in all sports. It does happen. Oregon's the number one team in the country for a reason. Dan Lanning is a phenomenal coach. His players have bought into his coaching and what he wants to do for Eugene, for the Ducks, and I think Oregon's going to come out firing great. I really think that they are going to, but I think it's going to come down to which defense will do enough to get stops. That's how I looked at it in the first matchup between these two teams, and that's how I'm going to look at it in this matchup. The first game was decided by 1 point. This game is going to be decided by pretty darn near the same. As of right now, Ohio State is the favorites. I do see why Ohio State is the favorites. Let's be real, Ohio State would most likely have beat Oregon in the first game if it wasn't for Dan Lanning's pure genius of knowing the rule book and pretty much running out the clock on defense for Ohio State to eventually lose. He can't do that this game. But he is going to have to pull out all the stops, and Dan Lanning is a defensive coach. So you would think that would give them the edge on making that defensive stop. Unfortunately, I don't see it going this way. I do see Ohio State pulling off the upset, even though right now they are the favorites. I do see them beating the number one team, and it hurts me. It hurts me a lot to say that because this is my Ducks. I just see Ohio State winning this game. It's going to be close. I think it's going to be almost just as close as the first game. I got Ohio State winning by 2 points. Can't give you an exact score, but I have them winning by about 2 points. But Ed, can Oregon prove that the regular season matchup wasn't a fluke?
Well, at least they're getting the opportunity to do so.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that they will, but it, for for everything that Oregon did right, part of it was playing at home. Autzen Stadium is, even with 50,000 people, it is an intimidating atmosphere once you're actually on the field. So Ohio State was not really ready for that, considering that they play in a 100,000 seat stadium, and they're like, "This is weird. How is half the amount of people just as loud as our 100,000 seat stadium?
Yeah.
It's weird."
Yeah.
Uh, and I think the question then becomes, one, does a couple of questions I have here are, as you alluded to, Oregon having the layoff, they already start slow in some games.
Mm-hmm.
So do they start even slower and allow Ohio State a way to put them away early, the way that Ohio State did with Tennessee? And when it comes to the Ohio State offense, are they set to be unleashed the way that they were against Tennessee in the first round? Just keep in mind this stat: in the playoff games after a Michigan loss that Ryan Day has coached in, Ohio State is averaging 41 and some odd points a game. That is a phenomenal turnaround from losing on your home field and then turn around and just open up a can of whoop ass on offense. And by golly, a $20 million roster better be able to put up some points.
Yeah.
So I I'm going to take Ohio State in this game. As much as I don't particularly care for Ohio State, it's nothing, no reason why I don't like them. I just that one guy in a group that you know you don't know why, you just don't like him. And
It's the whole state of Ohio, but I mean, if you have a guy in your group that tries to trademark a word like yeah, you automatically are disliked.
I think that's it. That
Yeah.
may be the thing. That may
Yeah.
be the thing. So I'm with you. It is going to be just nail biter all the way through. And I get it, man. This is the Rose Bowl. This is Pac-10 versus Big Ten.
Yeah.
This is championship. This is what the matchup should be in the
Mhm.
first year of this playoff. And
It
even
worked
though they're
out.
both in the Big Ten now,
Yeah.
eh,
Yeah.
but this is the traditional grouping that we want to see in the Rose Bowl
Yeah.
for all those that are just love college football to its core and all of its history. We want to see this matchup in the Rose Bowl versus some of these others that we've seen.
And I will say, Ohio State released their helmets for this matchup, and I'll tell you what, they're clean because it's your typical Ohio State helmet, silver with the Buckeyes, but the red pinstripe in the center is roses, and I think it's really cool. I'm not saying that's why they're going to win, but I will say look out for those details because it's pretty cool how teams incorporate things in their uniforms, and it doesn't get any better than with the Rose Bowl being able to incorporate that.
In Oregon's uniform, is it going to be set number 746?
747.
Ah,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. We, when Nike's on our side, we have so many different combinations and this, and that. But yeah, I will say, distance wise and time zone wise, it does benefit us being down in LA. But I'm still taking Ohio State this game. I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong. But it's going to be a great game nonetheless, and that is what college football is all about. And now on to our final game, and this is going to be actually the first game that takes place. This is being I thought this was on New Year's Eve, but maybe it's
No,
not.
this is the last game being played.
Okay, sorry. I thought of because Notre Dame, sorry, was the first game last week when they took on SMU, but or not SMU. Uh, Gosh, who am I drawing? Indiana. But that is the Notre Dame Fighting Irish against the Georgia Bulldogs. you know, Notre Dame, they may have a nice path right now because Georgia's going to be without their starting quarterback. And although Carson Beck is not the top quarterback in all of college football, when you're a playoff team and you lose your starting quarterback, Florida State, things look different. But I don't doubt Kirby Smart Kirby Smart is still a phenomenal coach, and I think that he'll have his troops lined up. But Notre Dame, ever since that loss, Ed, is playing a different type of football. They really are, and I know they haven't faced off against some of the best competition. But do we believe that Notre Dame is part of the elite in college football? I don't want to say yes just yet, but a win against Georgia in the college football playoff can help that status even more. What will a win mean for this program, Ed?
It will be an introduction to them being put back in that elite conversation as far as what college football is now. Yes, the ghost of Notre Dame all those years ago. And but let's keep in mind the last time Notre Dame won a national championship was 1988. We're we're getting up on uh, we're over 35 years since the last time that they won a national championship, and yet Notre Dame expects to be like revered as the end all be all program of all time. I don't think so. So this has got to be a game in which Notre Dame has to win for anybody to really take them seriously as a elite program and not just a good program or a very good program. They need a win like this to be put in the elite category. It doesn't matter that Gunnar Stockton, who's going to take over for Carson Beck, will be the starter. He's still a the top recruit at his position when he came to Georgia. So it's not like the guy was taken off of a milk truck delivery. This is a guy that I will be able to run this offense, and I have full confidence that he'd be able to run this offense. I saw what he did against Texas in part-time duty, and just imagine what he can do with the full-time starter role going forward. Because I'm not sure if you had seen this, but Carson Beck has declared himself for the NFL draft after his injury gets rehabbed. So Notre Dame, they need this to be in the conversation. They're not there yet. They are uh, the special kid at school that gets all the accolades for not doing anything. That's Notre Dame in my opinion. So yes, they do need this win, and they need it to mean something.
Yeah, I mean, I think every program needs a win in the college football playoff, but I'm in agreement with you. I don't care how many times Rudy has reruns on TV. It's not going to help the Fighting Irish in relevance in being a threat in college football because they have really yet to prove anything when it comes to the playoffs. Which team has? That's the Georgia Bulldogs. They have really made a case for being that team, whether it was Stetson Bennett or their head coach, Kirby Smart. One of them is still there, and you have to trust in him, especially in a matchup like this, because one has showed you time and time again that when they get here, they struggle. That's Notre Dame. The other team has showed you that they can win national championships in this playoff, and they've already won two. So that's Georgia. So when you look at this, Kirby Smart, you have to kind of put all your marbles in his basket because he has showed you that. But I will say, this is the game that Riley Leonard wanted, and that is why he came to Notre Dame. And he's going to get this game. He's going to get a chance to shine. Marcus Freeman's going to get this chance to shine. And yes, like I've said time and time again, you never know what can happen because we have seen crazier things happen before. But when you look at a factual and a statistical standpoint, Georgia has shown you that this is the game that they tend to win. So that is why I will be putting my marbles in that Kirby Smart and Georgia basket, even though they have a backup quarterback. And I'm going to pick Georgia to win this game against Notre Dame. If Notre Dame wins, will I be surprised? I will not, because Notre Dame is a better team than I've seen them in recent years. But until they could prove me wrong, I have to go with Georgia in this game, Ed.
Yeah, I'm in a similar boat with you. I think the the big factor that is going to help Georgia get over the hump with having a quarterback that hasn't started a game as it's going to be their running back, Trevor Etienne.
Mhm.
The ball has got to go in his hands. Georgia has to control this game clockwise for them to win. This may be one of the fastest played games of the weekend
Mhm.
because neither team is going to throw the ball. And if they do, it'll be high percentage throws. It'll be throws in which you're letting your players make plays quickly versus trying to throw down the field or sling it all over. This is going to be a hard nose in the trenches, 1940s style uh, running back, versus the defense, just in the trenches type of game. So, which which group of players do I trust in that scenario? It's going to be Georgia, and Georgia has proven that even with the what for them seems like a lackluster year, having two losses in the regular season, it's probably the best coaching job Kirby Smart has done over the course of a season, especially when you look at the type of schedule that they were handed going into this season, where they had to go to Ole Miss, they had to go to Austin to play Texas, they had to go to Alabama. I mean, what more do you want from these guys to think that they would not be able to do something special in this game? I think the 2 point spread isn't big enough. I think Georgia will be at least a touchdown winner in this game, but that's just how I see it because Kirby Smart has been there and James Franklin has not.
Yep. That experience matters. And yeah, I think you'll be able to count on one hand between these two teams how many attempts thrown are going to be more than 10 yards down the field. Because you're going to want, like you said, Ed, those high percentage throws, those screens, and those are all going to be around the line of scrimmage, not much further. So, yeah, it could be a very quick game as far as the clock management goes because you're going to see a lot of running and high percentage throws that just continues to let the game clock run. So, we're pretty much, I think we are all in agreement on all four games here on who will be victorious. Will that happen? We have yet to find out. I want to know what you guys think as well on who you think will win these four games because uh, these are the teams that earn their way to get here with the current format. So let us know your thoughts and opinions on who you think will win these games and who's going to win the national championship game because that's going to be here before you know it as well. So if you could do that, if you hit that like and subscribe button, share these videos, we would appreciate that. Yeah, also, once again, we want to wish you guys a happy new year and hope you had a very Merry Christmas from all of us here at Total Sports Talk Beyond the Lights. But until next time, we are rounding third and we are headed home.